Stories about childhood love. Story 1. From a failed gift to a happy marriage. In the 8th grade, Daniel, like many teenagers, felt that sweet yet painful feeling of falling in love for the first time. He thought there was no one in the world more beautiful than his classmate Laura. They often spent time together, playing video games, discussing characters from movies and comic books. There was no awkwardness in their company. Everything seemed so natural. Daniel was sure he had found a true friend, and perhaps more. She laughed at his jokes, and he was happy to give her joy, even if it was through funny game characters or humorous lines. Life seemed easy, and that feeling grew inside him until one day Daniel decided it was time to do something special. He wanted to show Laura how important she was to him. So one day, walking into a small corner store, he saw a ring. Daniel's eyes fixed on this simple piece of jewelry. It seemed the perfect symbol of his affection. Although at 14, he didn't fully understand what it meant to give someone a ring. But at that moment, desire was stronger than logic. He carefully wrapped the ring in a small box and approached Laura the next day at school. He handed her the modest gift, expecting her face to light up with a smile. But it didn't turn out that way. When Laura saw the ring, she froze in place, embarrassed, and then, without a word, ran away. For Daniel, it was a real shock. He didn't understand why things had gone wrong. It was his first disappointment in a relationship, and despite his parents' mild ridicule of the story, he never got over the awkward moment. Shortly afterward, Laura transferred to another school. The reasons for her leaving were unrelated to the incident, but for Daniel that moment was the high point of their childhood friendship. He took no offense, but in the back of his mind, he always thought he could have done something differently. Years passed. Daniel graduated from university, got a job in his hometown, and was preparing to enter medical school. Life went on as usual, and he almost forgot about that childhood incident. But one evening, when he and his friends went to a bar, something happened that can be called irony of fate. Behind the bar, he saw a familiar figure. It was Laura. They hadn't seen each other in over 10 years, but he recognized her immediately. Laura had grown older, more beautiful, her eyes shining, her voice familiar. Daniel felt the same thrill he had felt in 8th grade. He approached her and they began to talk. As it turned out, over the years they hadn't lost touch in their common interests. Music, movies, even the jokes were still the same. At that moment, Daniel felt that their childhood friendship was being rekindled again, but now in a new, adult format. Laura laughed at his jokes the same way as before, but now her laughter sounded different, more sincere and deep. Years passed. They met, traveled, shared their thoughts and dreams with each other. Daniel found himself thinking more and more often that Laura was not just his first love, but the one he wanted to spend the rest of his life with. He was sure that now he knew exactly how to propose to her and would not repeat the mistakes of the past. On their 3rd anniversary, he gave her the ring again, but this time it was not just a symbol of childish cuteness, but an expression of his deep and sincere love. He was ready for any response she might give him, but Laura smiled and accepted the ring without running away as she had done so many years ago. Now, Daniel and Laura have been happily married for several years. Their love story is full of surprises and twists and turns, but Daniel always remembers with a smile that first gift, the ring that embarrassed her as a child, and the ring that forever bound them together in the future. Story 2. Helmeted Destiny. How disdain for firefighters took an unexpected turn. In a small town full of preconceived notions and stereotypes, there lived a guy named Caleb. As a child and young man, he always talked about his great desire to become a policeman. To him, police officers were the epitome of manliness and bravery, while firefighters seemed like something lesser. In his eyes, being a fireman meant being a second-rate hero, and only police officers could be considered real men. Caleb grew up with this unyielding confidence, devoting himself to all sorts of training for a career in the police force. He studied forensics, actively participated in simulations and police games, and even took on a few volunteer policing tasks. His pride was evident and unconcealed, and he was not shy about sharing his opinions with those around him, often ridiculing those who chose chose the path of a firefighter. However, life, as it often happens, prepared an unexpected turn for him. When it came time to choose a profession, Caleb failed to qualify for the police force. Despite all his efforts, knowledge, and physical training, he fell short of the competition. Frustrated and depressed, Caleb was faced with a choice that he found less appealing but vital: to become a firefighter. Caleb made his decision and began studying and training at the fire academy. At first glance, everything went as expected. The hardships, the exams, the physical training. It was all part of a path he saw as a necessity, not a calling. But something strange happened. Once on the firefighting team, Caleb began to display the same insufferable confidence and contempt he had previously applied to firefighters. Now he proudly asserted that his path was just as hard, if not harder, than that of a police officer. Every day, Caleb became more and more annoying. He never missed a chance to show how hard the job of a firefighter is, how much he sacrifices for the community, how often his work is undervalued. Every conversation, every meeting with his co-workers, every training session turned into a lecture about how much harder and more important his job was. His colleagues began to see him as a caricature of smugness and arrogance. They realized that Caleb had not only not resigned himself to his role as a firefighter, but was deriving a kind of satisfaction from it in an effort to show his importance. Instead of hiding his shortcomings and learning from more experienced co-workers, Caleb created conflict situations, looked for reasons to be picked on, and bragged about his accomplishments, which were far from outstanding. At work, his delusions of grandeur caused incessant arguments and discontent in the team. Despite his best efforts, Caleb never managed to become the person he wanted to be. He built a reputation not only as someone who failed to live up to expectations, but also as someone who became even more insufferable in his new role. In the end, Caleb stayed where he was, but no longer as a police officer, but as a smug firefighter who no one could take seriously. Story 3. Echoes of the Past, a reflection of our own. In a small provincial town lived Brian, a man who always liked to reflect on his past. He wasn't an outstanding man, but he was proud of the fact that he had a first love he had once considered ideal. It was Brittany, the girl with whom he had spent his most awe-inspiring years of adolescence. They had broken up after high school, and life had taken them down different paths. Brian left for the big city, and Brittany stayed in her hometown. Several years passed, and one day, Brian, now an established man, returned to his hometown on business. Memories of his former love once again filled his thoughts. Curiosity drove him to visit the places they had once explored together, and he even began searching the internet for information about Brittany. He managed to find her social media profile and see her latest photos. Brian's first reaction was overwhelming. Unlike the slim, vibrant girl he remembered, Brittany now looked significantly different. She was fuller in the pictures, her face had lost its freshness, and her clothes didn't match the style that had once fascinated him. Brian felt something inside him shudder as his ideal image of Brittany began to crumble. It was then that Brian realized that Brittany wasn't the only one with a problem. He too had changed with each passing year. His own reflection in the mirror didn't look like the fit and ambitious young man he had once been. Brian noticed that he himself could not boast the same slimness and energy that he had in his youth. Work, stress, and lack of physical activity had begun to take its toll on his appearance. Hence, his own physical shape left much to be desired. As time passed, Brian began to realize that his interests and preferences had changed as well. He became less health conscious, indulged in excesses, and spent more time in the office than outdoors. Comparing his own changes with what he saw in Brittany's photographs, he realized that both she and he had gone through the same inevitable crack of time. The feeling that he and Brittany had become different people than they had once been. Story 4. Lost Chance, a story of a complex relationship and endless struggle. While attending college, a young man named Alex fell in love with a girl named Gwen. He was determined to win her heart and was ready to fight for her to the end. There was another guy in college named Martin who was also in love with Gwen. The rivalry between Alex and Martin was visible to everyone. Both guys were ready to do anything to get the girl's attention, and every time their efforts ended in conflict. While they both tried to win Gwen's heart, the girl seemed to be torn between the two suitors. In the end, Martin was more successful. Gwen moved in with him, leaving Alex with a sense of deep defeat. He took this as the definitive end to his affair, and their paths parted. Several years passed, and Alex Alex built his life until one day Gwen found him on social media. She wrote that she now considered Alex a missed chance, which led to an unexpected encounter. She reappeared in his life, and old feelings flared up between them. As a result, they were brought back together by physical attraction and had sex. From that moment on, a new chapter of their relationship began, full of turbulent emotions. Every interaction between them quickly escalated into quarrels, which were then replaced by violent passion. This series of constant conflict and reconciliation lasted for 4 years. Periods of calm were rare and often ended in a breakup, after which they got back together because neither of them could completely let go of old feelings. Their relationship was in constant crisis, and every time they started up again, it seemed like they were on the verge of finally breaking up. Over time, their passions began to wane, and the hatred that grew between them became much stronger than love. They broke off the relationship, and the pain of the final breakup stayed with Alex like a splinter in his heart. The period of loneliness was not easy, and after some time, Gwen reconnected with Alex. They tried a fresh start, and their time together was marked by sweet moments. This year was a true rebirth of their relationship, but even after this rebirth, the old dynamic began to manifest itself again. Once again, their relationship failed, leaving Alex in deep internal conflict. The pain of the last breakup left an indelible mark on his soul. Alex found himself in a state of constant inner bifurcation, balancing between memories of happy times and unbearable regret that everything had gone wrong again. Story 5. First Love in the Mirror of Time. When Joseph was about 10 years old, his life was filled with selfless affection for the daughter of his mother's friend named Louise. At a time when their mothers worked at a small restaurant, Joseph and Louise spent almost all of their free time together. These hours spent together were full of games, laughter, and childlike carefreeness. They stayed at the restaurant until late at night, and every night seemed like a little adventure. Joseph, being a shy and somewhat awkward child, found in Louise his first true love. He remembered the moments when the two of them would sit together in a corner of the restaurant, hiding behind tables, playing board games, and making drawings. On one of their last days together, before their mothers left work, Joseph, full of tenderness and awe, had given Louise his favorite collector's card featuring the Lion King. It was his way of expressing his feelings, even if he couldn't find the words himself. When their moms left their restaurant jobs, they stopped seeing each other. Time passed, and the ties between them were lost in the maelstrom of life. Joseph continued to grow and develop, but the memories of Louise stayed with him as a precious corner of his childhood. 8 years passed. Joseph, now an adult and an emerging man, happened to come across Louise on social media. She had become very different, and Joseph felt a bit confused when confronted with the changed Louise. Despite the changes, her warmth and friendliness was still evident. They decided to meet, and at that moment, Joseph saw that Louise had become a mother. She showed him pictures of her son, a sweet baby boy that she had taken care of with her mother to finish school and start a new life. Joseph was happy to see Louise after such a long time. He was touched that despite all the changes that had taken place in their lives, their meeting reminded him of the time when they were children and closer to each other than ever before. Seeing Louise cope with all the hardships and joys that life had brought her, Joseph experienced mixed feelings of pride and nostalgia. When they met again, they exchanged memories of their time together, and although nothing could bring those days back, they both realized that their connection had not disappeared. This meeting was a kind of closure for Joseph. He was finally able to let go of his childhood dreams and accept that they were now just a part of their past. Louise, on the other hand, despite her changes and new circumstances, remained the person who had once been his first true love. Story 6. From first kiss to moving to another country. When she was 12 years old and spending the summer at her grandmother's house, she experienced her first kiss. The boy she did it with was a 15-year-old who mistook her for a 14-year-old. The summer was filled with the invisible magic of teenage love, play, and selfless affection. They spent every free moment together, walking in parks, riding bikes, and talking about their dreams. However, the summer ended and they parted ways as their paths diverged with the end of vacation. She returned to her country and soon moved to another, leaving the memories of that summer romance in the past. But fate did not leave the story closed. When she turned 15, she flew back to her hometown for summer vacation. The boy, already a young young man of 19 was in her life again. Within a month, they became close again, and old feelings flared up with renewed vigor. Their time together was as rich and joyful as ever, and it seemed that time had not changed their relationship. But once again, it was time to say goodbye, and they parted again, each returning to their own lives. For 7 years, their paths never crossed again. They went on with their lives until, at the age of 22, she received a message from him on social media. It was the first contact after such a long silence. Gradually, they resumed communication, texting, and occasionally calling each other, maintaining their friendship. A year and a half ago, during her regular vacation, they met again. This meeting was full of nostalgia and old emotions that, despite the time that had passed, were rekindled again. They decided that they were ready to take the next step in their relationship. The decision was made. He left his country and moved in with her to start a new life together. This step was significant, but their feelings and affection for each other were stronger than any obstacles. Now, 9 months into their life together, they both feel they made the right choice. She, at the age of 26, and he, 29, are enjoying being able to make their dreams come true. Although their story began as a simple summer fling at their grandmother's house, they prove that true love can overcome distance and time, leading to a happy reunion.